Hey guys, so welcome back to another episode on today's property upgrading journey. When it comes to step 3 of your journey, what we will also want to understand is whether should you sell first, should you buy first, is in terms of your timeline, right? So we need to have a very clear understanding on our timeline as well. Do we have a place to stay? Do we need the funds to come out? Are we going to be hit with ABSD? So there's a lot of considerations that are going to come in place when you're doing this entire upgrading exercise as well. So we've also done an episode in terms of your timeline, whether you should sell first or buy first. Feel free to check out the episode as well. So importantly, we really want to ensure that your timeline planning is really done well as well, because that's also going to affect the flow of your funds as well as the transition of your family, whether you guys perhaps go back to your parents' place, or are we able to then do that one move. So of course, ideally, everybody loves to do a back-to-back transaction, and what we mean a back-to-back transaction is really to do your sale and purchase both concurrently without having to move into an interim place. And of course, to do that, that takes a lot of meticulous planning, because we have to ensure a few key milestones are met. First of all, we do not hit any ABSD. Secondly, we also got to make sure that the funds are being able to flow from completion of the sale to the completion of the purchase. And how much extension are we being granted by the buyers of our HDB per head? And what is the time frame needed from the next house in terms of the buying side? Do we have enough time to reno? Do we have enough time to move the entire family in? And does it hit any of maybe your festive seasons where your workers are not working, for example, like CNY? It's a little bit hard to find renovation contractors or renovation companies who are going to be fully operating during the entire season. So these are really things that takes a lot of meticulous planning to be done to ensure that we can do that one move as well. So next is step 4, and step 4 is really the highlight of today's episode. So we want to look at how do we then select the right property using our PLB framework. So again, we do not want to be buying the wrong property, and there are two main objectives when it comes to selecting the right property. First, we want to buy something that has an increased speed of exit, meaning to say that when we want to sell off this property, we're not going to be stuck in the market. Secondly, we also want to see capital gains. We want to see growth in this particular property that we are entering into, and this is also what we deem as sort of like the right property. So very quickly, I'm just going to show you this diagram right here. So first, we're going to understand what is the macro analysis first before we then dive into the micro analysis, then your project selection, then comes down to the specific unit type, and before then we talk about the pricing for that particular unit. So of course, it has to be coupled with, let's say, whether this is for own stay or whether this is purely for investment. But that's also going to affect a lot of your key decision making right here. But if you just take a look, these are the frameworks we're going to talk about. So disparity effect, pairing strategies, season of change, more analysis. You also have the 4-star rating in terms of grading particular set of properties, what are the appreciation potential, what's the kind of layout and bedroom configuration you want to go into to see the maximum gains that we can, and of course, what is the best pricing strategy to enter into. So in terms of our investment methodology, very key, we just want to make sure that we can stay in the market when we want to as well. We have no dependence on the bull market, meaning to say if the market is good, market is bad, we are still able to perform well and we are still able to exit with confidence as well. So this is Park Espa. Just take a look at some of the gains and the profits that the owners have made. One of the highest gains are about 688k. So the top 20 gains, they even start from 400 over 1,000 all the way up to 600 to 700,000 in terms of their profit gains. So these are actually very healthy profit gains, and of course, that can only have been done because these owners have taken the right step to enter in this particular project. Therefore, now they can realize all these gains as well. So we also want to be in that position where we can see these gains. So let's just have an overview of the macro factors first before we go into the micro factors. So of course, in the past 2 years, do you think that our world is becoming more certain or less certain? Right? So I think there has been a lot of negative news, a lot of talks about maybe the property price is going to come down, the economy is going to crash. So there's been a lot of this kind of speculations in the market as well. So in terms of global certainty, personally, I don't think there will ever be any global certainty, right? So there will always be more global uncertainty than global certainty that we can enjoy. So for example, in the past few years, we have like the Silicon Valley Bank failure, crypto took a deep dive also. Then we also had the issue with continuous rising interest rates. So most of the buyers will also choose to stay off the market because of that, because that also impacts your monthly installment. There was also another round of increase of buyer stamp duty, so more expenses when it comes to transacting a property. Of course, that affects your affordability. So there's also the stress test rate increase. That also means that your borrowing capacity has now decreased. These are just some examples of what were the negative events that have already happened in our market. But because Singapore's moat in terms of a destination for property is also known to be a safe haven, so that also means that we have a very, very strong moat. So our policies here in the way that our property market works is completely different from most of the other countries, in the sense that because our moat is so strong, most of the time what you realize that even though this major economic downturns might have already taken place, our property market prices are still pretty much stable. They have not come down. You're not seeing like fire sales anymore. You're not seeing people desperately selling off their property at a super undervalued price, because I think what Singapore and what the government has done very, very well is ensure a lot of moat that's being placed. For example, we have a very high ownership, right? So 90% of Singaporeans all own their own home rather than going out to rent. So technically, if let's say you own your own home, there's no reason for you to quickly sell off your property, because then you need to find a replacement home as well. So we do have that holding power. We have things in check like TDSR, MSR to make sure that we can really finance this property. So of course, cooling measures are great also because it ensures that we do not over leverage on our own finances. Of course, the second most key thing is that it also ensures that the prices in Singapore do not rise too quickly, in a sense where it becomes a bubble risk issue. In fact, right now, in terms of the bubble risk, Singapore is still considered more undervalued countries for property bubble risk index. And because Singapore itself is land scarce, we need to say that we generally have more demand for the ground rather than an oversupply in terms of property. Therefore, this very nice balance allows Singapore property prices to gradually increase, while sort of ensuring that every Singaporean still has that chance to own a home through our BTO schemes and our HDB schemes. And so the very core of Singapore's property in terms of the landscape would be your HDB segment, because 80% of Singaporeans and 80% of our supply in the market belongs to the HDB categories. Most of the times, if let's say you got into a BTO, your BTO by the time you MOP would have seen a very nice healthy profit. Most HDB owners like yourselves can then extract this equity that has been earned and then repump these gains. For example, you earn maybe 200k or 300k cash proceeds from your particular BTO. You can then use these funds to reinvest into a private condo as your initial down payment. That also means that you do not need to come up with any cash savings from your own pockets, and still allow you to upgrade into the private condo segment. And once the private segment condo owners are doing well as well, their property has seen a nice appreciation, maybe then they will upgrade to maybe a better location like RCR or CCR, or even go into the landed market. So this is generally how our market shifts. There's always a spillover effect, but it always starts from BTO. Importantly, a good property, I would think that is something that can perform both in a good market, both in a bad market, and that's not affected by any global uncertainties, right? So we want something that is very safe. We have certainty to be able to hold it so that we can enjoy the fruits once we have seen that level of appreciation that we desire as well. So once we've understand the macro factors, why Singapore properties are still on an upward trend despite global uncertainties, so now we have more assurance to deep dive into the micro selection, because the micro selection is really looking at what kind of properties to buy, what type of properties to buy, which district perhaps should we be looking at, right? And I think this is very common. If let's say today you are planning to upgrade and maybe you go to a gathering and then your friends are going to tell you, I read the news and I've done a lot of research, and new launch is better, buy new launch, because new launch confirm make money, and because new launch is brand new, you don't need to worry about reno, everyone buy at the same price, don't need to negotiate. So buy new launch, it's safer. On the other hand, there will always be a group of agents going to tell that resale is better. Why? Because resale you get more space at a lower price, so you're getting more value for the money that you put in. Nowadays, new launch condo too small already, very hard to live in. Resale condo, you can same price quantum, but you get a lot more space. So go for resale. And of course, for resale market, you can almost immediately rent out the property once you collect keys. Not like new launch, you have to wait for 5 years. So what is the answer here? Is new launch better or is resale better, right? So in our opinion, there's no one particular segment that's going to do better. Instead, how are we going to do this and what are the frameworks we're going to use to guide us, right? Is really the seasons of change together with the disparity effect. Okay, so these are two key frameworks that we want to deep dive now. So season of change, meaning to say in this particular season of the market, what would be the type of properties that maybe we should go for by using the disparity effect to hunt for good disparity and then make sense of what would be a better type. So for every year, it might be a completely different season. Maybe some years resale is going to do better. Maybe for some years, new launches are going to do better. Some years, POP projects are going to do better. So it really depends on the season that we are in as well. And the second one, in terms of disparity effect. So what is disparity effect? So disparity effect, there are two segments also, macro disparity and the micro disparity. Right, so for macro disparity, what we're really looking at is the entire Singapore market as a whole, and maybe in the particular segment like OCR, RCR versus CCR, what are the different kind of performance in that particular season. And for micro disparity, we are really zooming down more into the district itself. For example, District 19, maybe we're looking at Serangoon MRT versus Kovan MRT. And so right here in our team, our backend has also done a really great job and a lot of hard work into pulling out all the charts. So if you can take a look, we have all these charts here that are just comparing some of the key new launches versus TOP projects versus resale projects to help our buyers make a more informed decision as to whether there's going to be a good disparity in that particular district itself, and maybe what would be the wiser choice. Should you then go for a new launch or go for resale or TOP project? project in that particular season, in that particular district. So of course, if you'd like to discuss more about your property upgrading plans, feel free to arrange for a consult with our team. We'll be more than happy to share with you guys as well. Until then, my name is Caline Leong, and we'll see you on the next episode. Planning for your upgrading journey, and of course the last thing that anyone wants is to buy into the wrong property, is to really buy into the wrong property